Or not, and that's okay too, because we can all think of the flag.
Yeah, I apologize, Madam Chair. I did not get that image from Dave, nor did I get one saved prepared.
That's quite all right. Let's all rise and say the pledge, and just give it a second here. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Hope we didn't just commit some sort of flag faux pas by it not being present on the screen, but it's the virtual world, so.
My apologies.
All right. First up, we've got citizens. Oh, I'm sorry. Centrise, did you want to let folks know how to participate here in the virtual environment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you to the members of the board, staff, and public for joining us this evening for the June 7th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. I am not David Probolka. I am serving as the acting Ferguson Township manager in Township Manager Dave Probolka's absence. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a virtual meeting conducted using the Zoom telemeeting platform. If you are joining the Zoom meeting tonight as a member of the public or as an agent to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please enter your name, municipality of residence, and if applicable, the topic you wish to speak on using the chat feature located beneath the word bubble at the bottom of your screen. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items as usual to cover. First, the meeting this evening has been structured in a meeting format, not our typical webinar format. So I will provide instruction on how the public may engage and speak on any agenda item at the appropriate time. Please do not use, please do not take yourself off mute unless acknowledged by the chair. Also, the chat is not monitored, so please refrain from using it to ask questions or offer comment, as your question or comment will go unaddressed. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion, so the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Dineni?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Mitra?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first up, citizens input for items that are not on the agenda tonight. And if you could please state your name and your municipality of residence, and we are limiting input to 5 minutes. Items not on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. Centrise?
Nope, I don't see anyone either.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes. I'd like to entertain a motion for the approval of the May 17th, 2021 regular meeting minutes and the May 24th, 2021 special meeting minutes.
So moved. Presented.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Our first special report of the night is the coronavirus response report, and that will be given by Assistant Manager Centrise Martin.
Thank you, and good evening. So there are two notable developments I will report on tonight. As always, more detail can be found by visiting the Center Region Ready Facebook page or the COG website at crcog.net, as well as the Township website and the Borough of State College website for local or regional COVID-19 updates and additional items pertaining to the pandemic response. First, it is worth noting on May 28th, 2021, the Center for Disease Control released a public health recommendation which included 6 key points for fully vaccinated people. Fully vaccinated people can resume activities without wearing a mask or physically distancing, except where required by federal, state, local laws, rules, and regulations, including local business and workplace guidance. Fully vaccinated people with COVID-19 symptoms should isolate themselves from others and be clinically evaluated for COVID-19 if tested if indicated. Fully vaccinated people with no COVID-like symptoms following an exposure to someone with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 do not need to quarantine, be restricted, or tested following an exposure to someone with suspected or confirmed COVID-19. For now, fully vaccinated people should continue to get tested if experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. Unvaccinated people should still follow all prevention measures. Center for Disease Control prevention measures continue to apply to all travelers, including those who are vaccinated. In fact, all travelers are required to wear a mask on all planes, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation traveling into, within, or out of the United States and in U.S. transportation hubs such as airports and stations. The full list of regulations and additional information on the amended guidance may be found on the Centers for Disease Control website at www.cdc.gov. The Pennsylvania mitigation orders, except masking, were lifted on May 31st, 2021, as many of you may know. The Pennsylvania Department of Health Acting Secretary Allison Beam announced on May 27th, 2021, the Commonwealth's mask order will be lifted by June 28th, or when 70% of adults get their second dose, whichever comes first. That being said, currently our local regulations are preemptive to the federal guidelines enacted by Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors, Ordinance 1064, adopted on January 18th, 2021, remain in effect until modified by the Board of Supervisors. Therefore, the regulations to mitigate the risk of transmission of COVID-19 virus and wearing of face coverings currently still apply in Ferguson Township. Second, it is also important to note that the Center Region municipalities may have variations in their local regulations. It is important that the public is familiar with local regulations that are in place even when traveling nearby. Should the Board of Supervisors approve a modification or repeal the COVID-19 ordinance in Ferguson Township, it will not apply to jurisdictions outside the township. While regionally we have coordinated our best effort to achieve consistency in our regulations, this is not to be assumed, and residents may still be fined for violations of other local ordinances. Countywide, there have been 15,378 confirmed cases, 1,497 probable cases, totaling 16,875 cases, representing an increase of 188 confirmed COVID-19 cases since you received your last report, and 68,874 negative test cases reported on the Pennsylvania COVID-19 dashboard as of the June 7th report. There have been 224 deaths attributable to the virus in the county. In Pennsylvania, the confirmed number of cases reached 1,010,186 with 27,354 deaths. More information on local conditions and response efforts can be found on the State College Borough website, as well as Ferguson Township website. Thank you all to Ferguson Township residents and business owners for your continued patience and understanding as Ferguson Township recovers from the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. This concludes my report, and I'll be happy to respond or answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you so much, Centrise. Does the board have any questions? All right, we will be discussing our ordinance later, so if you're interested, stay tuned. And moving on to our, thank you, Centrise, to our next special report. That's Cindy Hahn, the Director of CNET, for our annual report. Welcome, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen, which, you know, you always hope works. Let's see here. Is that looking good for everybody?
It looks great.
Okay, super. I had anticipated that Thomas Giles would be at the meeting tonight. He is the Ferguson Township representative to the CNET Board of Directors. I haven't seen him on the list of people. Has anyone else happened to see him? If not, I'll just proceed without him. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present tonight. This is always a pleasure. I'm going to move through this very quickly, and I will, at the chair's pleasure, be happy to take questions, including really hard ones afterwards. So, some highlights in 2020. Of course, as you all know, virtual meetings became the norm for CNET and everyone else. We did sort of experiment with some various hybrid configurations over the course of the year. Hybrid meetings do provide a variety of audio and video challenges. Sort of every meeting room is a little bit different when it comes to how best to handle a hybrid meeting, but we worked with that over the course of the year off and on. Penn State's response to COVID had a tremendous impact upon CNET. You may recall on March 11th of 2020, the university directed students not to return from spring break. And so at that point, we lost all of our spring interns, and we went forward in the summer and fall with only 2 interns each semester, whereas usually we would have somewhere between 5 and 7 interns every semester. We did produce 451 programs in 2020, which is a decrease of about 6% from 2019. So I think that's still a pretty hefty number, given the year and the staffing issues. And another highlight, of course, UAJA became a CNET member in January of 2020. There is now an all-time high of 16 member organizations, 3 of which are authorities that have joined in the last 3 years. The franchise agreement between Comcast and the CAC, the Center Area Cable Consortium, was signed by Comcast in January. The consortium is made up of all of the municipalities of the Center region, along with Bellefonte Borough and Benner Township. The new franchise includes a subscriber pass-through of 32 cents per subscriber per month that Comcast subscribers will see on their monthly cable bills, and that money is passed through to CNET for our capital needs. People will see that on their bill labeled as a PEG fee, PEG standing for Public Education and Government, and that is approximately 32 cents per subscriber per month. And we began receiving that quarterly PEG fee funding in May of 2020. We revamped our website in 2020 to provide sort of a cleaner, fresher, more well-organized homepage. There's a bright orange button there that says Watch Now that takes people directly to the video player. Very easy to access the individual playlists from the homepage, along with our YouTube channel. And both Channel 7 and Channel 98 are now both streamed live from the homepage of the website. In terms of Ferguson Township programming, the township sponsored 28 supervisor meetings, 3 of which were specifically budget meetings, another 13 planning commission meetings, 1 town hall on the proposed stormwater fee ordinance. There was a meeting where there was a miscommunication of meeting dates. So we actually aired only the audio of the January 20th supervisors meeting. And so in terms of program value, that is only considered a quarter of a program. So the total programs in 2020, the value is 42.25. There were an additional 68 bulletin board messages sponsored. These are, of course, primarily meeting agendas. We value them as 1/10 of a program. So those 68 messages equate to 6.8 programs. So you do all the math, and the total in 2020 is a value of 49.05 total programs. So last year, the township was responsible for just under 10%, 9.5% of all of the programming by all of our members. And that figure had been 9.6% in 2019. So really very stable from year to year. This graph just shows you the last 5 years, 2016 to 2020. You can very clearly see there where the Planning Commission meetings began being televised in 2018. That's what's responsible for that significant increase. If you look at the last 5 years, 2016 to 2020, Ferguson Township sponsored 8.57% by all of the programming, by all of our members in that 5-year period of time. The percentage of programming in the previous 5-year period of time was 7.81%. And again, that is because those years with the Planning Commission are slowly rolling into the funding formula, or the 5-year period that we look at. The funding formula is determined by that 5-year rolling average. So the programming that you sponsored between 2016 and 2020 will determine the amount of your 2022 annual CNET dues. So this is just a picture of what the last 5 years have looked at. The red arrow is pointing to Ferguson Township at 8.57%. The tallest bar there, 14.86%, is State College Borough. They have been the largest user of our services since the very beginning. And the third bar on the graph is Center County Government at 13.2% in second place. So as a reminder of where to watch, your Board of Supervisors meetings are televised on Channel 7 in the 6 days following a meeting, at Wednesday at 9 a.m., Friday at 6 a.m., Saturday at 12 a.m., and Sunday at 8 p.m. If you have a meeting that is shorter than the 5-hour block of time, that is shorter than 2.5 hours, half the length of your 5-hour block of time, your meeting will air twice. So a shorter meeting will air Wednesday at 9 a.m. and then again at 11:30. But again, the meeting has to be less than 2.5 hours for that to be accommodated. The supervisor meetings are streamed live on YouTube. Our YouTube channel is CNET Center County. And the Planning Commission meetings follow essentially the same airing schedule, but on alternate weeks. The website, again, is cnet1.org. Both Channel 7 and 98 are live streams on the website. And we put the programs there, of course, online, on demand, with chaptered agenda items, which make them very, very user-friendly to watch. People just simply need to click on a agenda item of interest to them, and they'll be taken immediately to that point in the meeting. And we keep those meetings online for a minimum of 12 months. So this is what it looks like when you go to watch a meeting online. The first arrow there is pointing to the various agenda items, and then all previous meetings are listed there below. So you have access to both the chapter points in the meeting you're watching and all of the previous Board of Supervisor meetings. We are also available on Roku, either the set-top box or the streaming stick. People just need to search for peg.tv and look for the CNET logo. And we are also on the Apple TV set-top box. Just search the Apple TV App Store for CNET. I do want to mention it is only the Apple TV set-top box, not Apple TV that is on your cell phone. Now, as I've mentioned to many of you in the past, I am not ever able to give you data about how many people are watching on cable TV. That's considered proprietary data by the cable company. What I can give you are the number of people who are watching the meetings online. And so what I've done is I've broken it into Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission for both the period of January through December of last year and January through April of this year. So you can see for the Board of Supervisors, an average of 87.9, median of 80.5, and then another 37 views on YouTube. The numbers have not differed greatly between 2020 and 2021. They're fairly similar. The Planning Commission has experienced a more significant jump between 2020 and 2021. On the horizon for CNET, those Comcast PEG fee funds secure our capital funding for at least the next 10 years. That's great news for our members because it helps to stabilize the financial contributions. We are looking to increase the number of over-the-top platforms that we are viewed on. Amazon Fire is another option for us that we'll be looking at. The Board of Directors is working on an update to our last strategic plan. And of course, we will be continuing to adjust to whatever we come out of in terms of virtual meetings, hybrid meetings, what have you, adjust in order to bring your meetings to your constituents. That's really the end of my formal presentation. I do have a closing slide that I created because this is really what 2020 looked like for us, and I'm sure for all of you as well.
That's great.
So we've all heard this, right? So I will stop my share. Again, at Madam Chair's pleasure, I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Cindy. I know that certainly all the members of the board and the Planning Commission recognize the incredible value that CNET provides. We've all watched it and learned from it, and not just within the township, but across the region, and it's fantastic. I'll be happy, and thank you for the presentation. It was really well done, and I appreciate all the information that you always provide about the township's use. So any questions for Cindy? Lisa.
I just had a quick question about those hybrid meetings. So to facilitate those, like, if we were to go back to a hybrid meeting format, is that going to depend, what can air? Is that going to depend on the equipment we have in the township building or more on the CNET end? Where are we at on that?
I would say that for the most part, how you would handle a hybrid meeting is something that should be coordinated and decided on the part of the township. And then our role is to figure out how we would best record that for our purposes. That being said, back sort of earlier in 2020, we did experiment a couple times with some hybrid meetings from Ferguson where we had a couple people in the room and others at home. And, we brought in a couple devices that were helpful in facilitating that. So I don't mean to be blurry about my answer, but I think primarily it is a township decision about how you're going to best have a hybrid meeting. And then it's sort of our job to look at how we're best going to cover that for you. Does that help?
That answers it really well. Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Lisa. Good question. Thanks, Cindy. Others? It looks like you're off the hook relatively easy, Cindy.
Okay, that's terrific. Well, thank you very, very much. Again, I appreciate the time. I know you always have very full agendas. It's a pleasure working with the Ferguson Township Board, and please call us if there's anything at all anything at all extra that we can ever do to help you with.
Thank you so very much.
Take care.
And you too. Okay, so let's move on to unfinished business. And first up is a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, revising and extending the temporary emergency ordinance requiring the wearing of face coverings and implementing additional regulations to reduce the risk of transmission of the COVID-19 virus. This will be presented by Centrise Martin.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the redlined ordinance advertised for public hearing, amending the temporary emergency ordinance implementing COVID-19 safety protocol. The board reviewed the draft at the regular meeting on May 17th and authorized staff to prepare an amended ordinance to modify the masking requirement to reflect the Department of Health guidelines. I'll also note that the what's provided to you in the redlined document is an increase in the social gathering sizes from 50 to 100 persons. And since the board last reviewed the draft on May 17th, the Department of Health announced that Governor Wolf will rescind all COVID-19 restrictions for vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals on June 28th, or when the Commonwealth reaches a 70% vaccination rate. So with this announcement and the recent decisions of Patton and College Township to repeal their ordinances, staff is recommending that we, and has also advertised accordingly, that the Board of Supervisors repeal the ordinance in lieu of the amendments. Both motions are provided, however, for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Centrise. And this is a public hearing, so we will be going to public comment first. Obviously, things have been changing so quickly, we can barely even keep up with them. And we'll then discuss as a board after the conclusion of public input. Would any citizens like to be heard on this matter? It appears not. So I will close the public hearing and let's go for a motion, maybe first.
Well, this is Steve. I'll move that we repeal the ordinance with COVID. I'm not sure how we're doing it. COVID regulations.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Patty. I'll second.
All right, let's have some board discussion. Steve, did you want to speak on the motion?
Well, I'll just say that I was in two businesses today, one of which requires masks and the other doesn't. In both cases, most people were not wearing masks. But I think that, to me, it seems that given that anyone over the age of 12 is able to get the vaccination now if they want to, and that we have no way to tell if someone has or hasn't been vaccinated, it doesn't really make sense for us to try to go to an ordinance that differentiates between the two. And I think given that the state ordinance is about to expire, there's no point in us having well, ours was tied to that anyway. So I think we should just go ahead and repeal it now.
Thank you, Steve. Would anyone else like to discuss anything? Lisa?
Can I just ask a question? And it might be for Jenna, I'm not sure. So the accommodations that were made for businesses to operate under, special rules so that they could, have seating at a restaurant outside and so forth. What is that tied to?
That would be at the emergency declaration by the governor.
Okay. So
Good question. Good question. Yeah.
Okay, so we probably need to look at that then fairly soon to determine what we're going to do with that. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting the feeling that the board is all in agreement on this. So if no one else has anything to contribute or discuss, let's go to a roll call vote.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks.
So this would be a roll call vote, ordinance 1073. Ms. Deneni,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. All right, next up, we have the conditional use application for 1518 West College Avenue Center Animal Hospital, presented by Jenna Wargo, Director of Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. An application for a conditional use permit for the use of a property located at 1518 West College Avenue as a veterinarian clinic has been filed with the township by the property owner, Tussie Tracks LLC. The applicant proposes to consolidate two lots, 1518 West College and 1512 West College Avenue, raise the building on 1512 West College, and renovate the existing Center Animal Hospital building located at 1518 West College Avenue. The township zoning ordinance and the municipality's planning code require a public hearing on the application, and the board must take action to approve or deny the application within 45 days following the hearing. The board held a public hearing on May 17th, 2021, and received testimony from the township staff and applicants' representatives. The township manager has prepared a draft decision based on the record from the May 17th public hearing. No additional testimony will be taken at tonight's meeting. The board is asked to review and discuss the draft decision and take final action to approve or deny the conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenna. So let's go to board discussion. Does anybody want to propose any changes? Are we happy with this, the write-up? And if so, we can take a motion.
Okay, this is Steve. I will move that the Board of Supervisors approve the conditional use permit for 1518 West College Avenue, subject to the conditions described in the decision written by the township manager.
This is Patty. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All right, it looks like we are ready to move to a vote. I believe this is just a voice vote, so I will ask all in favor to please say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry,
Excuse me.
Centrise.
Sorry about that.
Roll call.
Madam Chair, so this is actually, I think the board discussed at the last meeting that this would be a roll call vote.
Oh,
It's
okay.
quasi contractual and
Okay, no problemo. Thank you for calling me out on that. Not a problem. All right, let's go to a roll call vote.
all right. So this is a roll call. We'll start with Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Mitra,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Deneni.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much. All right, moving on to new business. First up, consent agenda. We've got 3 special event permits, Thanksgiving, the Glimpshire Keystone Country Ride, and the Cycling Classic. We've got the voucher report and an appointment of Jonathan Pino to the Center Region Building and Housing Board of Appeals. So I'd like to take a motion to approve the consent agenda and accept the voucher report.
This is Patty. I'll move that we approve the consent agenda and accept the voucher report.
Presented second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next up, a public hearing on a conditional use application for 179 Apple View Drive, tax parcel 24-004-067G-0s. This will be presented by Jenna Wargo, Director of Planning and Zoning. Oh, Prasenjit, I see you have your hand up. I'm sorry, did I?
Yes, Madam Chair, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Mr. Paul Tackett and Bill Sharp from the Spring Creek Commission had contacted our manager, Dave Pribolka, to give a 10-minute presentation, and that was supposed to be on the agenda today. At least the copy I have, I don't see it, and I was wondering if that could be accommodated within the agenda.
Yes, yes. In the copy I'm looking at, perhaps something was omitted. There's maybe a draft running around, but I'm seeing it, looks like to me up next on the agenda.
All right,
If there's
thank you.
an error in the agenda, we can.
Yeah, I got the agenda off the website, so it might have an old copy there. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Percentage. Thank you very much. Yep, so we'll go back to the Apple View Drive public hearing, and then we'll have our Spring Creek presentation up next. And so Jenna, if you want to take it away here. I know I'm a little bit shaky on this one, so I might need some guidance from Centuries on this one as well. But we're going to go to Jenna first to present this.
Thank you. So the board will conduct a public hearing on the application for a conditional use permit for 179 Appleview Drive. Chair Giannini will preside over the hearing this evening. The board is asked to direct the Director of Planning and Zoning to prepare a draft written decision for review and approval at the June 21st, 2021 regular meeting. An application for a conditional use permit for the use of the property located at 179 Appleview Drive submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department on May 6, 2021. The applicant is requesting conditional use approval for the use of the property as a model home in accordance with Chapter 27502.24 Township Zoning Ordinance, Municipality Planning Code required public hearing on the application, and the board must take action to approve or deny the application within 45 days following the hearing. As part of an approval, the board may attach reasonable conditions and safeguards related to the conditional use standards detailed in the zoning ordinance. Provided with the agenda is a copy of a memorandum from myself describing the findings of fact and recommended conditions from staff and Planning Commission's reviews of this request. Let's see. And I believe we have Mr. Seltzer here as well, in case there are questions for him.
Okay,
And similar to the previous one, we have the findings of facts, our recommended conditions to be included, and site location, etc.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenna. This is a model home conditional use is something that's very common, but this is a little bit of a new process for me, so that's where I'm a little shaky. So I believe that I will open the public hearing on this matter, and I will open it up to any public comment first. And do we have any public comment? All right, it's appearing to me as if no. Centuries, do you see anybody out there I'm missing?
I do not see any name in the chat box or a hand raised at this time.
Okay, and then you'll see, board, that it contained in the recommended motion is the motion that would close the public hearing. So I will entertain a motion at this point.
I, Percentage, move that the Board of Supervisors close the public hearing and direct the Township Manager to present findings of fact and a written decision to the board for consideration at the June 21st regular meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Steve.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have any board discussion? Steve?
I don't actually have, I mean, I'm fine with this recommendation. I did have one wording that I think should be changed when the final permit is written. In the staff recommendations, it says that it can be, let's see, it can be extended by 3 additional years or until 90% of the lots on development are sold, whichever is less. I think that should say whichever occurs first, because I think that would be a lot more clear.
Right, it's a time frame as opposed to an amount.
Right.
I feel like the
Other than
chemists.
that, I have no problem with the.
Fantastic. That makes complete sense to me. How about you, Centrise? What do you think? And Jenna?
Yeah, I think it's added. It adds value and clarity to the sentence. I'll make note of that for the township manager.
Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, thank you, staff, for the work on this. And we'll I'm going to go for a roll call vote on this one. Centrise?
Okay, absolutely. Let me just, all right. So this is a roll call vote. Mr. Mitra?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Deneni?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. And next up is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, supporting the Spring Creek Watershed Commission's One Water Plan. And this will be presented by Prasenjit Mitra, Paul Takak, and I believe Bill Sharp is also joining us to help present. Thank you. And Prasenjit, did you want to kick that off for us?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Spring Creek Watershed Commission has been developing the Phase 2 report of its One Water Plan and is now seeking non-monetary support from the participating municipalities in its pursuit of Phase 3, which includes the development of the One Water Plan and its implementation. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the resolution as advertised for public hearing, expressing support for Phase 2 and the development of Phase 3. As provided in the resolution, Phase 2 emphasizes the critical need and multiple benefits of a systemic watershed-wide science-based approach to watershed management, a One Water Plan that is driven by the participating local governments along with state and federal agencies, water utilities, planning commissions, Penn State University, citizens, businesses, and industry. The Phase 3 One Water Plan includes the goals of protecting, enhancing, and sustaining a healthy and resilient cold water stream ecosystem, maintaining and improving water quality and quantity to sustainably meet the needs of the human community now and in the future, and integrating and coordinating management for sustainability, economic growth, recreation, and quality of life. With that, I will pass it on to Mr. Paul Takak to give us a 10-minute presentation that contains the details of the plan.
Thank you very
Paul,
much.
thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone. If it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is everybody seeing a nice little waterfall there?
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. The goal of this presentation, again, Prasenjit laid it out very well, but the goal of the presentation is to provide a brief history of the Spring Creek Watershed Commission and its work, also to provide a brief update and a synopsis of the recently completed Phase 2 report, and to outline our future plans in order to gather your comments, your feedback, and we trust the endorsement of the Board of Supervisors. Bill Sharp, who, as many of you know, is a longtime member of the Commission and is familiar with much of the history, is also here to help answer any questions that you may have following the presentation. But before we go on, what is a One Water Plan? Briefly, it's an innovative and collaborative approach to water resource management, whereby municipalities work together in order to maximize benefits, reduce redundancy, and save money. The long-term benefits of such an approach include not only a reliable, high-quality water supply and healthy, sustainable ecosystems, but also enhanced economic and recreational opportunities that benefit everyone in the watershed. So we'll go ahead and proceed then with a brief history of the Commission and its efforts to lay the foundation for just such a plan for the Spring Creek watershed, why it is needed, who will benefit, and what is necessary in order to move forward and make that a reality. The Spring Creek watershed covers approximately 175 square miles. has a total population of over 130,000 people and is highly developed along most of its length. The area is underlain by karst geology, which supports a huge aquifer system, which provides the majority of the water supply through springs. But ultimately, all of that water comes from the sky. It's really a finite resource. The Spring Creek Watershed Commission was founded in 1996 to help develop a vision and a plan for the watershed's future. The membership of the commission consists of elected officials and representatives from 12 of the 14 municipalities in the watershed. This work is also supported by over 30 other stakeholders, including Clearwater Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, and other nonprofits and community organizations, along with water and wastewater authorities, local businesses, and county, regional, and state agencies. The mission statement of the Spring Creek Watershed Commission can be summarized in 3 words: vision, leadership, and planning. Specifically, the founding mission was to establish a long-term consensus vision for the watershed and to take a leadership role in the development of a comprehensive long-term watershed management plan to advance that vision and to help guide future projects and programs on behalf of the member municipalities. In 2003, the Commission published a Phase 1 report to help guide development of the watershed and thoroughly analyze the overall environment, including the impact of population growth and land development. This Phase 1 effort had 2 primary objectives. The first was to develop a comprehensive matrix of the problems and challenges facing the watershed, as well as potential solutions and future areas of research. The second was to identify and organize information on the Spring Creek watershed, particularly surface and groundwater, the water supply, and land use. In addition, the report also began the process of compiling and researching other watershed reports and plans in order to help guide future efforts. Unfortunately, however, after this first report was completed, further progress stalled due to a lack of funds. Nearly 15 years later, the Commission started work on Phase 2 of the Watershed Plan. Roughly $16,000 in funding to support this effort was provided by local municipalities and authorities, as well as by Penn State nonprofits and businesses. This funding provided administrative support, including the hiring of a project facilitator. A work group was formed and developed additional background information. They also held several public forums and presentations to gather input from the community. This effort highlighted several key issues and concerns. The first was that population growth and land development was not only continuing, but accelerating. In addition, the lack of a comprehensive plan to identify and prioritize challenges, opportunities, and solutions greatly increased the risk that water resources might become insufficient to meet the future needs of our community and of the ecosystem. This is complicated by the fact that dozens of entities are responsible for making decisions about land and water. All this and more clearly underscored the need for a more collaborative and cooperative approach. However, it also became abundantly clear that what was not needed is another bureaucratic or regulatory layer, but rather the development of robust partnerships between all stakeholders, including the public. The resulting Phase 2 report was approved by the Watershed Commission in December of 2019. It's available on the website, and I can send a follow-up email with links if you prefer for your convenience. The key findings of the report are captured in the revised forward-looking vision statement. The vision for the Spring Creek watershed is integrated, collaborative management of water resources in an environmentally, economically, and socially beneficial manner. This vision emphasizes long-term resilience, reliability, and economic prosperity, as well as the importance of community and stakeholder involvement, but not more regulation or any effort to change local governance. Instead, improved communication and coordination is expected to lead to significant benefits, including considerable savings by reducing duplication of effort and improving both efficiency and effectiveness. Such cooperation could also be expected to help in securing outside funding and grants. The report emphasizes that in order to make all this happen, a Phase 3 planning effort is needed in order to develop a comprehensive 50-year roadmap for integrated water resource planning in the Spring Creek watershed. With a long-term One Water plan as the goal, then, what are the next steps? Basically, there are two. The first step is to get consensus approval from a majority of the participating municipalities that the Commission should move forward with this Phase 3 effort. We hope this presentation, while brief, sufficiently describes the goals and benefits of such an undertaking. However, it is important to emphasize that such authorization does not require or imply any funding commitment. As stated in the founding agreement, ongoing support of any Commission project is strictly voluntary on the part of each municipality. Then, upon approval of the Watershed Commission, the Watershed Commission will appoint a Phase 3 work group to guide the next phase of the project. The Phase 3 work group would then be tasked with the following: to prepare a preliminary project plan and outline, to develop a realistic budget and pursue funding, particularly in light of current challenges posed by the pandemic. It's estimated that the initial budget may be in the range of $35,000 to $45,000, but as the project develops, this could increase. It's expected that much of this funding will be from outside agencies, authorities, and organizations, as well as municipalities that might be interested in contributing. As soon as feasible, the working group would also assist in contracting a project director and hopefully support staff. Additional responsibilities would include researching other One Water plans, engaging local, regional, and statewide stakeholders and the public, and providing regular progress reports and presentations to the Commission, member municipalities, as well as the public. Finally, the working group would help in producing the final Phase 3 One Water Plan report for consideration by the member municipalities. These efforts will, of course, be continuously monitored by the Commission and the member municipalities. The process will be open, transparent, and inclusive, but most importantly, it will be collaborative rather than regulatory. In conclusion, a comprehensive One Water plan for the Spring Creek Watershed will provide a strategic vision and a framework to maintain economic and environmental prosperity and a high quality of life over the long term. Improvements in communication and collaboration are expected to lead to not only improved outcomes, but to considerable savings. But perhaps most importantly, this process will help build a greater sense of community and confidence in our collective future. We ask you to support this effort and consider approval of the non-binding resolution provided as part of the meeting packet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very nice presentation, and I do have a deeper understanding of the effort here tonight. I think Bill Sharp is also with us. I'm sorry, when we're in full screen, I can't always see everybody. Bill, did you want to add anything to the presentation or make any comments before we go into discussion? And then I also just have a reminder for everybody who is not currently speaking to please mute your microphone. Thank you. Bill, did you want to say anything?
But not at this point. I'm here to answer any questions. Like Paul says, I've just been around forever, so I maybe can come up with some answers if some things do come up.
Let it be said, I didn't say that. I didn't say.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Sounds good. Okay, let's go to any discussion. Do any of the supervisors have any questions or have anything they'd like to discuss about? Oh, I'm sorry. It's a public hearing. I apologize. Let's go to public comment first. Does anyone from the public have anything they'd like to comment on? Okay, I'm seeing no one. So we'll close that public hearing, and now we will go to supervisor question and discussion. Steve.
Yeah, I just had a question. I know you're not asking for any funding at this point, but my question is, are you planning on hiring any consultants or experts as part of developing this Phase 3? And if so, what is your funding mechanism for that part of it?
Yeah. So there's no funding required to move forward with the Phase 3 plan and pull the working group together. That's an unfunded organization that will help direct it, just like the phase 2 was. At that point, then there are some leftover funds from the phase 2 report, along with those unused funds potentially, as well as some funding from outside organizations. We've been making this presentation to, Trout Unlimited actually earlier this evening, the Sierra Club, others, Penn State, several of the organizations. There may be outside agencies and grants that would sort of seed the process. There's a great deal of interest in this and how the rather innovative approach, because most of the One Water plans that are out there tend to be large municipalities or much bigger organizations. This is really unique in that it's a collaborative effort among a dozen municipalities. So I think there's a great deal of interest in what will come out of this. So the plan is that would then seed the ability for the working group to hire a project director and perhaps additional staff. We do have right now, communications coordinator and website managers, and so we actually already have a program in place, but this would be specifically directed toward that. And as I said, they would be tasked with developing a budget, realistic budget, because we really don't know at this point what that's going to cost, and then going to pursue outside funding. We would expect that the bulk of that would not be coming from the municipalities. It would be coming from outside agencies or grants.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Paul. That was a good question. Any other questions or comments from the board? Patty?
I just wanted to bring up the fact that we had received, I guess, a communication from the farming community saying that they would like to have be involved in this, a seat at the table, so to speak, and that they get somehow a representative from the farming community is part of phase 3 and anything moving forward.
Sure. That would be great. I mean, we want as many diverse voices and stakeholders in the process, right? There are a lot of regulatory requirements in place. What there isn't a lot of is an understanding from a holistic perspective of what are the requirements, what are the benefits, what are all that. So yeah, I mean, we have to bring together the agricultural and business communities generally, developers, there's a lot of factors that go into this, as well as the regulatory agencies and particularly the municipalities. I think one of the challenges is we all have, College Township, Ferguson, we all have responsibility for what happens within our borders. But the question is, how are we coordinated, and do we really understand what's happening elsewhere in the watershed and how that then affects what's happening downstream? Because what you do in Ferguson eventually ends up in College, eventually ends up in Benner and down the line, so you can just basically trust that out. But yeah, I mean, anybody and everybody, it's the public generally and the agricultural community and business community. Absolutely. Bill, I don't know if you want to maybe comment on the previous efforts, the phase 2 and phase 1, and who was represented there.
Yeah, as you said, Paul, pretty much anybody is invited to the table that has an interest. We had several public forums. Over 100 people attended one of them. So we put a lot of effort in the phase 2 process of getting people to come in and share with us. Some of those people were part of the work group as well. So work group members, people, pretty much around the watershed, people that we know, but we did get some of the major agencies in, Fish and Boat, Fish and Game, SRBC. There were quite a number of them that came in. Penn State had representatives at the table. So yeah, like I said, during that process, they came in, they contributed, they provided an awful lot of information, they discussed the items, So basically what we came up with this phase 2 report was a consensus of ideas. And, those were the ideas that we collected, which are basically suggesting where we might go forward. But the whole idea is that there's about 30 agencies that are involved in land and water use decisions. And what we would really like to do is to get them together to engage in a conversation, to share information. There's some areas that, we could reduce duplication of effort. Combining work with various projects with, particularly with water and wastewater, which an awful lot of money goes into that. But the big thing is we're looking at the impact of future growth and development, have been for a long time. A lot of people have been doing this for a long time, but the impact of growth and development on the quality of life in this watershed. And I think that is pretty much the bottom line. As Paul indicated, we are not creating a regulatory or administrative body. It is strictly a collaborative group. In terms of Steve's question, how much is it going to cost? I can just put in perspective that the phase 1 report was produced by maybe 1 or 2 full-time staff members. The phase 2 report, the contributors were, Penn State, CBICC, Clearwater, Trout Unlimited, municipalities and authorities. They provided about $16,000 for that. And we did hire a facilitator. We only spent $12,000. So in terms of what we're going to need, that work group is going to have to take a long, hard look at how the process does unfold, how official it has to be. But like I said, getting back to the question is, our idea is to make this as inclusive as possible. This is our watershed, and this is our quality of life.
And if I
Thanks,
might
Paul.
just tag on to that, there is so much expertise here in this local area. I think for a lot of these one water plans, when you're looking at the bigger, citywide systems or countywide systems that have done this, they have to go outside to look for a lot of expertise. We have, Penn State, we have a lot of the state agents. I mean, a lot of it is here. It's a matter of getting everybody to the table and sort of pulling in all those ideas. So, I do think that if we were starting from scratch, it could be an expensive proposition. But honestly, I think it's premature to think that it will be.
Thanks, Paul. So I wanted to ask a question at this point about the cost. And I think just to, explain the nature of this conversation a little bit, I think one concern perhaps that I have, maybe some other board members have, is that an initial support of this effort might encumber us, obligate, maybe not in the written word, but in process as we move down the line and have the discussion. Then it's kind of like, well, you support it. Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Because we've heard that recently. Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? So that's a concern. And here's I think, I guess for me, why I'm particularly concerned representing Ferguson Township, because, we're doing projects like the Park Hills Drainage Way. We're doing projects like the Suburban Park reconstruction of that waterway. We're putting real major dollars into water quality projects. And to me, it seems, and here's my question is, somewhere I read it would be $300,000 to $500,000. And so if that's incorrect, I need that to definitely be corrected, because that's a large amount of money that would then be eventually expected to make a plan for something we already know what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that your map that you showed is really important. There are a lot of entities there, and they all have different regulations. But, and I'm going to say that, Ferguson is known to be a leader in this area. And so, for us to say we're committed, well, yeah, we're committed. We're already spending our dollars for it, right? So to commit more of our dollars eventually, to try to convince others who fail to have the political will to make those commitments, it seems maybe not where the best use of our dollars might eventually be. So for me, I'm all hung up, right, on saying, yes, I support this because I'm afraid that down the road, I'm going to be asked to put my money where my mouth is, but I already have when others haven't. So that's a lot of questions. But first is the $300,000 to $500,000 range that I read. And now I'm sorry, I can't backtrack to where I saw it. Where am I getting that?
So that was one of the initial estimates, and Bill can probably speak better to it, but that was a shot in the dark estimate that came out of one of the authorities that looked at the cost of other One Water plans and where they were developed. But honestly, it is truly a shot in the dark. We don't know that it's going to cost anywhere near that amount of money based on what happened with phase 2 and based on the expertise that we already have at the table. I tried to answer that when Steve asked the question. I don't think it's going to cost anywhere near that much. If I might real quickly though, before I pass it over to Bill, just 2 points in the series of questions or concerns that you articulated there. One is the bylaws, the articles of agreement of the Spring Creek Watershed do not obligate any of the 12-member municipalities explicitly from any financial obligation beyond the per capita agreement of 10 cents per resident.
Yeah,
to support the basic work of the commission.
Right.
So there's no obligation for any project or anything else. I think for you and for college and for the borough, MS4 communities as an example, right? We have obligations based on population size, and we are doing all those things, but all of those efforts can be can be undone.
Yeah, absolutely. But if it's not a regulatory piece, then there's no obligation. So it's kind of a circular thing.
So there's a carrot and a stick here, right? So regulatory requirements are a stick. This is also articulating the carrot, right? We've seen how quality of life can affect the ingress of people into the area. We've seen that, right? I mean, we're dealing with population growth and those kind of things. One of the things that we see going forward is that quality of life, recreational opportunities, and all of the rest are going to be increasingly important for the watershed communities generally.
Yes.
Because look at what's happening with the workplace of the future, right? People can move almost anywhere if they have rural broadband, if they have high quality of life, right? There's a lot of requirements that fall into place there. So what we're trying to do is say this isn't just a regulatory stick. What this really is it benefits the watershed as a whole, and that then ties into a much bigger context. So I don't know if I'm quite addressing the concerns, but the way that we're looking at it is this is an opportunity to collaborate and communicate and to creatively get together to understand what are those carrots and how can we work together to not undo the work that you do, that college does, College Township or the borough or somebody else. So I don't know if that answered it, but I was going to actually ask Bill if you might be able to hit on some of those points and maybe articulate them better than I did.
I'll give it a try. It's a good question, Laura. The number was actually $500,000, and it was thrown out as a ballpark figure based on absolutely nothing. It was just, that's what other people in big places with lots of money spend to bring in high-level consultants who tell you everything they know, which may or may not fit. This is just my private opinion, may or may not fit what's going on in your community. We have no idea what's going on. In fact, one of the things that I did when we finished the phase 2 report, my response to that was a lowball figure, which was the figure that Paul quoted. We could probably do this for $35,000 to $45,000 per year, might go on for a couple of years. Now, I'm a professional project planner and manager. So and I've been at this, 11, 12 years. I've been on council. I'm on the Planning Commission and Industrial Development Authority. I'm looking at the big picture of the pieces that need to come together. My feeling is, to start with, it's not going to be a whole lot of money. The work group is going to have to come up with a scenario about that. But getting back to the role of the municipalities, there is an agreement. It is a very strong agreement that was put together, passed under ordinance by Ferguson Township and all the rest of participating townships in 2007 when the Watershed Commission was reformed, that very clearly limits what the Watershed Commission can do. It is a commission. It can only recommend. This process that we are bringing before you tonight is mandated under that agreement that you have to agree. A majority of you have to agree before we can even move on to talking about phase 3. And those agreements place you under no obligation whatsoever. Even if your representative votes for an issue at the Watershed Commission meetings, you are not bound in any way to follow that. The Watershed Commission is not a majority rule organization, for that matter. We can have a majority rule over our issues, but that is not binding on the municipalities. The municipalities have the authority to pull out at any point. And in my opinion, and I will stress this all the way down the line, we will do nothing major without coming back to the municipalities. I don't think we can do anything. We can put together a proposal for phase 3. We're not going to go into phase 3 until we come back to you guys and says, this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to involve.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So I'm going to make a comment, just maybe wrap up board discussion and then ask for a motion. You guys, you probably, at least Paul knows that it's uncanny, the identical conversation that we're having right now that we just did about Whitehall Road Regional Park funding. Same scenario. No obligation. It's only if you want to participate. It's not a problem if you don't. You've only committed this amount of money. You don't have to commit any more. We're going to do this for this amount of money, so on and so forth. We won't do anything without. And then there was I don't know if it was a year-long process. It seems like a very long process of kind of trying to convince Ferguson Township that then we should do that thing. We should give more money, right? Because there's no obligation, but you're holding the rest of the region back. And so I am admittedly very leery at this point in saying, yes, I support this, because I know that down the road, it's going to be like, well, put your money where your mouth is, because I don't want to pay for a one water plan that's not binding, where Ferguson Township valuable tax dollars are already doing all the right things. That being said, I'd be very supportive of a consortium of municipalities that would go together to strengthen our grant funding capability to do projects. But I don't think we necessarily need the one water plan to get there. We need political will that is not there. So that's my comment. I want to open it up to the rest of the board members to have any final words. And then I want to just take a motion and then we can continue with the conversation, but just to get kind of moving on. Yes, Lisa.
I'll go ahead. Paul, thanks for the presentation first. I wanted to say that earlier, you had already answered a lot of the questions I came into this with, so I appreciate that. Just the general history and how we got to this point. So I do understand Laura's concerns, especially, just kind of the where we are in time right now. So I get that. I think, my perspective, I think, is a little bit different and was informed by the presentation tonight too. So I think hearing about the formula that's used for funding, the activities at this very limited scale right now, I think makes sense. Those are two vastly different numbers, $35,000 to $500,000. So those are very different. I hate to say it like this, but I cannot imagine that other municipalities participating would, jump on board to a $500,000 price tag for something either. That being said, I read through everything and I understand we're not obligating ourselves to this right now. So I think it's important to go back to what Paul said about the carrot and the stick. I think, Laura's exactly right that we are doing, so many big dollar projects to improve and preserve water quality here in the township. We are doing these things and we do have strong ordinances. I am thrilled that we're a leader in this area. And so I think to protect those efforts and make sure that money and those efforts aren't wasted, I think it is important to broaden the reach, bring everybody in who has a hand in this, and again, be a leader and participate in bringing people together in this way. So great points raised. I am really supportive of this at this time, and thank you for bringing it to us.
You.
Thank you, Lisa. Always insightful comments. Any other supervisor comments or questions before we go to a motion? All right, I would love to entertain a motion, please.
Yeah, I personally would move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution supporting the Spring Creek Watershed Commission One Water Plan.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
Yeah, I was listening to that and I have similar thoughts. And now from our efforts in the projects that we have undertaken, and this is a question to Bill, each of these small projects itself sort of takes $250,000, $300,000, and so on and so forth. So even with $500,000, I mean, if we need to do something major, we'll possibly have to come back and raise the funding for those. And the $500,000 for the whole watershed seems like actually a small amount if we are trying to take do a comprehensive something, given our individual small project expenses. So I think, and given the expertise at Penn State and their willingness to help us, there were many of them who have come over the last year and talked to the commission, gave presentations about their work and showed their excitement. I think the plan can be chalked up at a reasonable price. There might be a small amount of administrative costs or consultant costs. But I think for the real projects, we'll pretty much have to take it, especially big systemic projects, we'll pretty much have to take it case by case and do it as a consortium of municipalities. Bill, any comments on that?
Well, again, we don't know what the scope of this is. I'm hearing comments from your Board of Supervisors that really what they would like to see is us get into a conversation. And I hear, and I know that Ferguson Township has done a lot of really wonderful things. And the question I would ask in turn is, how many people know what you've done? And what we're looking at is 12 municipalities who need to know more about each other. Penn State University, the authorities, et cetera. That's what I'm looking at. My personal bias is we do not need a lot of organization, and an executive director, one person, even part-time, doing the administrative stuff, can work magic on what an association, a commission, any organization such as the Watershed Commission can do. I don't think we're going to need a lot of money. As you said, there is a lot of expertise out there, and the question has come up. If we ask these people to come to the table, what's that going to cost them? It's going to cost them the staff time. So we have to be sensitive of little factors like that. So if we ask your manager, if we ask staff from Penn State to come in, it's going to cost those institutions, those municipalities, the authorities, it's going to cost them a little bit. And we're sensitive of that level. of expenditure. Like I said, I do not think it needs to be big. I think it needs to be collaborative. I think the first and foremost thing that we need is a network where people are talking to each other, understanding what's going on. And one of the advantages is if something comes up that is not in the interest of any municipality, you get a larger forum to take it to draw expertise to maybe how to mitigate that. So maybe we could come out with less regulation or regulation that is in some way mitigated, less costly, like we do with the MS4 partnership, where people get together and work together and reduce the cost of getting that very complex and difficult process done.
Thanks, Bill. Paul, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Yeah. Just to amplify what Bill said, I think there's a real difference between the cost of individual projects and the cost of developing a plan or a framework that everybody can buy into. Just a specific example, we just did the Aspen Heights student development, right, on the old Hilltop Mobile Home Park. It sits right next to the Thompson Woods Preserve, right, which has Thompson Run and Walnut Run and goes right into Millbrook Marsh and down into Spring Creek. The developer, College Township, tasked the developer with mitigation of stormwater runoff. So they put in a very innovative underground retention pond that actually holds the water, cools it off so that it doesn't provide any thermal shock going down into the run, which would have a negative impact on the ecology. Required a riparian buffer to help slow down that water flow to keep it. So those individual kind of things, yes, will cost money. But the idea is that that's happening in a larger framework that everybody can agree is important. And that's where, Laura, to your point earlier, you said, maybe bringing a consortium together. That's exactly what this is meant to do. But one of the other things too, and this happens a lot, we all know, we've got a municipal election this year, we'll have another one in 2 years. Boards turn over. So it's nice to have something that everybody can refer back to and say, this is important to our community. This is important to our communities collectively. And we support this, we buy into it. But, to your point, Laura, there is no authority involved, right? Like there is with the Center Region Parks. There's no existing loans or obligations that we have. There's no formal agreements like that we're asking here. What instead we're asking is the ability to move forward and make some proposals about how do we work together better, because it isn't just Ferguson and College and the borough. It's Spring and Benner and Walker and Milesburg and Bellefonte Borough, right? What are they going to do with their dam and the waterfront development there? That all impacts the economic and well-being of the region as a whole. So I think we all need a seat at the table and we all need to be thinking about this in a proactive way. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you both. And I am going to wrap up this discussion. It's been a really important discussion and I think it had to be had. And the effort and the work is very important work and needs to be done. I don't typically explain my vote, but I am going to tonight. I am going to vote for this. But I'm strongly putting a caveat on that I am not at all interested in contributing funds to an effort that will be a non-binding plan that we are already doing the work that will be contained in that plan. So that's important to me because of other priorities, right? That we have to balance as supervisors. And so I just wanted to be very transparent about that. And so in the future, I'm not going to put my money where my mouth is because I already have put taxpayers' money where my mouth is. So, all right. Any closing comments from the board? Okay. Let's then please go to a vote. And this is both a public hearing and a resolution. So let's please do a roll call vote. Centrise, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair. So the roll call vote for resolution number 2021-21. Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Deneni,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
and Mr. Mitra.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Centrise. And thank you all for your time and your effort, your presentation, and the work that you're doing. Really much appreciated, and good luck.
Thank you all very much. We look forward to
Thank
coming
you.
back and sharing the results.
Thank you.
Enjoy the evening.
All right. Next, let's move on to the traffic calming petition for Havershire Boulevard, Circleville Road, and Rushcliffe Street. This will be presented by Mr. Dave Modricker, Director of Public Works. Welcome,
evening.
Dave Modricker. Hi.
The township did receive a petition for a traffic calming study from a resident of Ferguson Township, Ms. Patel, signed by at least 10 residents. And the request comes after a vehicular accident where a vehicle jumped a curb and crashed into the resident's garage. Staff has communicated with the resident, and we were not able to provide any guidance or recommendation short of this request for a traffic calming study to relieve the residents' concerns. Also, in your packet is a copy of the traffic calming policy. Tonight, the board can move to deny the request or forward it to me, the Public Works Director. If you do forward it to me, just as a little refresher, because it's been a bit of time since we did our last study. First thing that I would do would be to compare the street classification with the eligibility criteria. Assuming it meets that criteria, the next thing we do is define a study area that includes all of the properties whose driveways utilize the street of concern, along with other neighboring properties that may be impacted if their direct primary route is, through that corridor. We would then do data collection. Data collection typically involves doing a speed study and a volume study. To be eligible, for volume control, the volumes on the street would need to exceed 1,000 vehicles a day. And for speed control, our criteria is that the 85th percentile speed must be 10 miles over the post or more over the posted speed limit. If those criteria are met, then we move on to the next part of the process, which is, a little bit more involved, but I at least wanted to let you know what those initial first steps would be. And so tonight, staff is recommending that the Board of Supervisors forward the traffic study request to the Public Works Director in accordance with the Ferguson Township traffic calming policy.
Okay, thank you, Dave Modricker, for that presentation and going over the main points of that policy for us. Let's start with a motion. If anybody's ready to make one.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors forward the traffic study request to the Public Works Director in accordance with the Ferguson Township traffic calming policy.
Wait a second.
I'll second it, Steve.
Okay. Let's go to board discussion. Any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm concerned about, the fact that, a car actually crashed into somebody's house or garage, and so I'm leaning towards supporting this motion, but I'm willing, I want to hear more from others.
Okay. Steve?
I just wanted to comment that we spent some years ago quite a bit of time developing a procedure for this because we were getting quite a few requests. And I think that, the first step of it, which is doing the study, is, in my opinion, it's something that we owe the residents if there is a petition that is presented to us to at least have the data to say, yes, we should go forward, or no, you really don't meet the requirements at all, so we're not going any further. But we did develop the process in order to make sure that we were treating everyone fairly when a lot of requests were coming in at a brief period. So
Thank you, Steve, for that history, and that's a really important perspective. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I before any more conversation, I also share though that it is a process, and it doesn't, if I understand correctly, hasn't resulted in a solution at this point, because there is also a step too. I believe that there was a step when we employed this before that required that all of the residents that were affected also support the solution that's evolved. And in that case, there wasn't support for that. So it's a process. It's not kind of one and done. So just so everybody's definitely clear on that. So I want to ask for any other board comment, and then if any members of the public would want to comment. Any more board comment? Okay, any members of the public? Okay, I see a hand up. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and your township of residence. It's just with the telephone number. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a name. I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, this is Stephen Hilton. I live in Patton Township, but I'm the property manager at the Heights of State College, which of course is in Ferguson, and we branch off of this particular location. And I would just like to go on record as stating that we have had ongoing concerns and problems with people, not necessarily just our residents, but sometimes I'm afraid it is our residents, but also other people utilizing that road, going through at a very, very high rate of speed. And I believe that we would be in support of any kind of change that could come to be that would possibly help squelch that problem.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else? Okay, it doesn't look like anyone else would like to comment. So if we're ready to move on to a vote, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Modricker. Looks like you have some task at hand.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is a proclamation of Ferguson Township Park and for Ferguson Township Park and Recreation Month, introduced by Centrise Martin.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Muted. Can you hear me? All right. Yep. Thank you, Madam Deneni. Yes, so attached to this agenda, you should find a proclamation for designating Parks and Recreation Month in July. Since 1985, America has celebrated July as Park and Recreation Month. This is a program of the National Recreation and Park Association, NRPA. The goal here is to raise awareness of the vital impact that parks and recreation has on communities across the United States. This July, Ferguson Township plans to release a series of articles and short interview videos with Parks and Recreation Committee members here in Ferguson Township, as well as CRPR. We also intend to invite residents to tag Ferguson Township on social media posts that promote local outdoor parks and recreational activity. We also plan to facilitate an activity where we take pictures of different icons or images of parks and post on our social media and saying, where am I, to increase engagement and participation as we recognize and celebrate all the great stuff in Parks and Recreation. Additionally, residents will be invited to submit a story or illustration that features their favorite local park or a memory at a local park. All of these activities will then result in Ferguson Township staff in doing a prize drawing each Friday at the end of each week in July. All month long, we'll be celebrating with various activities that encourage local outdoor opportunities for health, fitness, recreational fun for residents of all ages and abilities. issuing this proclamation, we aim to remind Ferguson Township residents of the importance of our parks, recreational facilities, and programs while encouraging everyone to embrace active lifestyles and improve their overall health through outdoor recreational fun. I also want to invite everyone to check out our website here in the coming weeks for more information. You can also check out nrpa.org for more information, as well as Center Region Parks and Recreation's website for additional activities within the region.
Thank you, Centrise. Thank you very much. And I'll just comment that I've really enjoyed the Public Works little video snippets. It's really a neat thing that you all are doing. And so it looks like you're planning to continue that kind of a format with this effort, and I'm looking forward to it. And I hope Norris Muth talks a little bit about the iNaturalist use in the Ferguson Township parks, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. He'll be pinged or invited, I should say, to do a short mini interview. I'll also take this time too, just to kind of give kudos to our Township Communications Coordinator. He is very talented, and his skill allows us to take on these mini interviews and then, you know, do some editing, all the things that he does. I really can't describe to you, but it looks good at the end. So thank you for that acknowledgement. I'll pass it along.
Sure. Great. Please do. All right. I'd love to entertain a motion.
Yeah, I presented would move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation designating July as Parks and Recreation Month in Ferguson Township.
Do I have a second?
This is Patty. I'll second.
Okay, great. Any conversation? All right, let's vote. Let's see, proclamation. I think this is just a voice vote. Sorry, I'm a little tired tonight. My brain's not working quite as it should be. All right, so all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes unanimously. Next up is the authorization to apply for a variance from the construction of the Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project. Centrise Martin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So also Dave Modriger is with us this evening still. So if there are some questions that I'm unable to answer, he is with us. But yes, Township staff and consultant NTM Engineering have been finalizing the design and permitting associated with the stream bank stabilization and improvement project at the Park Hills Drainage. Chapter 27, Section 27-7013 of Ferguson Township Code of Ordinances provides that no activity, land development, structure, building, obstruction shall be permitted within an identified floodway portion of the floodplain project. The subject project here will improve the quality of the floodplain. So the variance is to request to construct, because there's some earth disturbance in the floodway area. Before you here is the consideration for the board to authorize a variance application for this Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project.
Thank you, Centrise. Let's start with the motion.
I'll move that the Board of Supervisors authorize a variance application for the Park Hills Drainage Way Improvement Project.
Second, Patty.
Thank you. Any discussion? Right, it seems evident that if we're working in the floodplain, we're going to need to work in the floodplain. Yeah. So,
and then we will later get a item on the agenda. Do we want to support the application for the zoning variance?
Right. Let's not shoot ourselves in the foot on that one. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Next up, consideration of funding pedestrian accommodations at the intersection of PA Route 26 and PA Route 45. That would be the Y intersection, and this will be presented by Dave Modriger.
Thank you, and good evening again. So PennDOT District 2 is finalizing the design of the realignment and signalization of the intersection of Route 26 and 45 Some of you recall a presentation some years ago that was provided at a regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. At the time, they were doing, receiving public input, and there was an analysis also to compare to see if a roundabout would function. The decision was made to proceed with a traffic signal, not a roundabout. So since that time, design work has been underway. Has been involved in the review, because after a traffic signal is built, it then becomes the responsibility of the township to maintain it. And so throughout this process, including, what was known as PennDOT Connects, they've had different names for different ways to engage municipalities and the public in their process. The township did communicate to PennDOT that pedestrian accommodations were desired at this intersection. I believe during a review by the township engineer, they may have even initially shown some pedestrian accommodations. The township engineer made some comments. PennDOT's response to that was they further looked into the requirements for pedestrians and felt that in hindsight, the warrants weren't met. So they then performed a study and decreed that they would not include pedestrian accommodations at the signal. Township engineer brought that up with me. I brought it up with the manager. We were quite concerned and felt that the board might be concerned about this also. We could not convince them to include pedestrian accommodations. However, PennDOT responded back that they would install pedestrian accommodations if the township paid for the funding for just those pedestrian accommodations. I guess the good news in all of this is that the entire project, it was funded through the transportation improvement funding, with all state and federal fundings. And this is the first time the township's being asked for funding for the project. So in that regard, you got to kind of, I guess, swallow hard a little bit here and recommend that the Board of Supervisors appropriate funding in an amount not to exceed $28,075.83. It's in accordance with an estimate that's attached from our Transportation Improvement Fund to construct the pedestrian accommodations at the intersection of Route 26 West College Avenue and Route 45 Shingletown Road.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to you and the rest of the staff for doing all the hard work to try to convince PennDOT to give us the money. I'll go to Prasenjit with the question, and then I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, so Dave, when I drive around there, almost nobody walks. There's hardly any sidewalk there. So I'm all for pedestrian safety and so on, but I just wanted to find out why your recommendation is. I mean, do we expect a lot more people to be walking there in the future, or can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So, there is an attached study based on engineering judgment, and in consultation with, the district and central office, they recommended no pedestrian crossings. So in essence, what they would be doing is making a much needed safety improvement, which is a great thing. And then at the same time, actually making it illegal for somebody to walk from Pine Grove Mills, say, to Ferguson Township, if they so desired. Now, you're right, there's not a lot of walkers. You certainly could and would be, I guess, justified to post it, no pedestrian crossing. Seems like the wrong thing to do to me, especially after hearing for many years about trying to somehow make better bicycle and pedestrian connections between Pine Grove Road and the rest of Ferguson Township. So that's really, I think, the basis of my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. It was a good question, Prasenjit.
Yeah.
I'll add before I entertain a motion that, part of the issue with getting a safe pedestrian corridor between Pine Grove Mills and the rest of the township is that there are a lot of preserved farms along roadways. And so, like when we were exploring where we would put a bike path, there are just constraints. And so it does seem like we have to kind of take an any and all approach to try to exploit any opportunity for pedestrian access. And so that's just my general perspective on that, hearing the conversation over the past several years. So I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I Prasenjit move that the Board of Supervisors appropriate funding in an amount not to exceed $28,075.83 from the Transportation Improvement Fund to construct pedestrian accommodations at the intersection of Pennsylvania Route 26, West College Avenue, and Pennsylvania Route 45, Shingleton Road.
You have a second?
Lisa, I'll second.
Dave Modricker, I have, I think maybe two questions. So, so basically by doing this, we preserve the right of pedestrians to cross there, which could be impeded by PennDOT if we don't do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. I've seen it in other areas throughout the district, and I just, I get dismayed when I see it, when it actually, I mean, if somebody's going to walk through there, they're probably going to walk through there. I don't think they're going to turn around, and walk the miles back to the
never
camp.
mind. I'll walk 5 miles back. Yeah.
But it just doesn't seem right to me when one of the goals of PennDOT really is multimodal transportation along their corridors, to then make it illegal for a pedestrian to walk from one point to another without accommodating them at an intersection. But it wouldn't be the first time or the last time that it's done. And, the study that they did supports signing it no pedestrian. So if you so desired, you could do it.
Right. And that makes sense, because though if there's no pedestrian accommodations, then it could be dangerous and then they would want to sign it. So you're like creating that condition that would make you have to sign it even though you don't really want to. So
that's right. If you don't accommodate it, then for liability reasons, PennDOT, would want to put the signs up that says no pedestrian crossings, because if somebody gets hurt, they can point to the fact that we told them, they couldn't cross here, even though I don't know how legal it really is for them to legally prohibit a pedestrian walking along the shoulder of a state road, let alone a resident whose driveway comes right out there. But again, we didn't get a legal opinion. It's not the first time it's been done, and it won't be the last.
Right. And then one other quick question, and I could have 1 million questions on the topic of PennDOT and us, so I'm going to keep it bracketed here. But my question is, could you just briefly hit what the pedestrian accommodations would be?
Yes, sure. And thanks. I might actually I'll pull the estimate up in front of me here. Great. So it is a number of signs, stub poles, meaning a little pole that comes up out of the ground. It's got a foundation that you put buttons on. The cables to connect those to the actual traffic signal mast. And then there would be LED countdown style pedestrian signal heads, as well as the line striping. So when you look at it on a plan view, Laura, all you really see is kind of striping. So it's hard to tell. There's a lot of hardware involved in making it functional.
Thanks. And then would we be permitted and or obligated to, we as the township, keep that line striping, or is that like we have to ask PennDOT, or how
No, that line striping would be shown on a traffic signal permit plan, and we are responsible for everything on that permit plan at that signal, the lights, the stripes, signs, the push buttons, everything. So we would automatically be repainting those ourselves.
Okay, that's wonderful. I love to hear that. Okay, let's see. I believe we had a motion and a second. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Lisa.
Just a couple. I too could go on and on with questions about this, but so can you describe what the signage will be that'll be posted there?
So the signage would be the typical signs that you see instructing a pedestrian where the push buttons are, and just any instructions about the push button itself.
Okay.
You know, what you won't see is you won't see signs that say no pedestrians, right? What you're gonna see are the LED signal heads for pedestrians and push buttons and little instructional placards that basically say pedestrians push here. And then any other, you know, instructions pertinent to the style of push button that we put in.
Okay. Signs that are put further down the road that would signify, you know, a pedestrian crossing ahead coming up. How would we get one of those signs in down the road to highlight that there is a pedestrian crossing up ahead?
We typically don't have those where we have traffic signals, because the line striping on the road, the walkway, kind of indicates it, and we have the LEDs. But if we wanted to do it, I don't think it's going to be that difficult. You're talking about just pedestrian crossing ahead type side signage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could probably look into that a little bit more.
Okay.
Given that it's on a state highway, we'll probably have to get their permission for those signs, and then they'd permission to install, and then we would maintain them. But any of the other traffic signal signage, you know, traffic signal ahead, or, you know, whatever you may yield signs or whatnot, those are all on the traffic signal permit plan, and we're responsible for, for maintaining those.
Okay. And then, so did you say that initially this intersection had met the warrants for pedestrian accommodations, and then they looked at it again and it didn't?
So this is my understanding of the way this played out, is that during design, I believe one of the plans that they gave our township engineer to review did show pedestrian accommodations. The township engineer had comments about truncated domes and landing areas and more, I'm going to just say more thorough accommodations, things that seem to affect the grading and the amount of work that they had to do and where the rail was located, and a little bit more fill, which then may have impacted easements that they acquired. And I think they were concerned about that, is my opinion.
Okay.
And their response to that was, we've looked at this further, and you know what, guys, we don't even have to accommodate pedestrians, so we're not. And that's when I got a little bit more involved with the manager and said, all right, I get it. They don't want this huge cost, and they don't want it to start affecting the design in a way that puts them behind schedule. But can we get back to the original accommodations? But unfortunately, I guess the ship had already left the dock. They did a study to support their conclusion, signed off on it, and said, we're not going to accommodate pedestrians. Then when the manager approached them again, their answer was, well, if the township provides the funding, we'll go ahead and put these accommodations that we originally had planned, but we said we weren't going to. And so I think that's, Lisa, how we got to where we are now.
Okay.
Actually talking to the folks at PennDOT. So, all this has pretty much been through the township engineer.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I understand what Prasenjit's saying. It's not a lot of pedestrian traffic there, but there is some, and it is on a bicycle route. I drive that intersection multiple times a day, and so there are often people walking and jogging even across that narrow little bridge. So it's, it does occur. And because we're getting dozens of homes, a commercial area, and the park, within a half a mile pretty soon, I just feel like it's going to increase that that pedestrian traffic there, and certainly bike traffic. So, and you might have, runners along with bikers, whatever. So that's that. But then this also makes me think about the other problematic Route 26 and 45 intersection we have. And, if that intersection doesn't meet the warrants for a full signal, like we're trying to go after here this fall with a study, could we look at doing these kinds of accommodations there with, better hatch marks across the road and signage and pedestrian push buttons and the countdowns and things? If we could pay for that, if that's something the board wanted to look at, or, get PennDOT to do that, but that seems like much, more low-hanging fruit. And that's the one where we have a lot of pedestrian traffic and no safe, absolutely no safe place to cross. So
yeah, that project we have, you've seen us put local funding in there, hoping that PennDOT, that project would rise in the rankings. Unfortunately, it hasn't got there yet. This fall, hopefully when the schools are back to full capacity, you saw in my report, and I know the manager also, followed up, that we do plan on doing that study. So we'll see what the results look like for the flashing signal in Pine Grove. And if we can't, warrant and justify a fully actuated signal there, we'll follow up on your comments about what other accommodations might we be able to consider.
Thanks, Lisa, for that question. You're reading my mind. I'm like, all I want to hear is PennDOT to say we can do it. Yes, you have permission. So thank you.
Well, that's
Laura,
and I'm wondering if we should even pursue that ahead of that study, because who knows when that study can happen, possibly in September, and then how long would it take to process that, analyze the results of that, get that through PennDOT. I'm kind of thinking we need to go down this road at this point.
Well, let's continue to talk about that. So, Prasenjit.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think that having the pedestrian crossing is a good idea. I was just doing due diligence, not saying that we don't need it. And in that sort of, in that spirit, I'd also ask, is there, with respect to the signs saying that there is a pedestrian crossing, one thing is, when people see signals from far away, they know that, most possibly there's a crossing. So if the road bends, then there is a good reason to put such a sign. And also if people are just crossing randomly earlier on, maybe if we tell them that there's a crossing a little ahead, then it might help. But, again, I would like to know if there are such issues that are happening there, and then put the sign up. Otherwise, maybe not.
Thanks, Prasenjit. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Do we have any more comments, questions? All right, let's vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Madam Chair, I'm
Centuries.
sorry. Yeah, I didn't get who seconded that motion.
Oh, okay.
I have Mr. Mitra motion or moved.
Correct.
But
It was Lisa.
I thought it was Lisa too. I'm like, wow, I have no memory of 5 minutes ago. Great. That's great.
My apologies for the disruption.
No problem. Okay, let's move on to staff and committee reports. And okay, I just have to reveal that I'm right now acknowledging that I learned from Cindy that if we get through these in a half an hour, Our CNET program is going to run 2 times instead of 1 per day. So that's an exciting and interesting thing that we learned today. Okay, so executive committee is up first, and well, you all know what happened at the general forum meeting. Do we have any questions about what then happened at the executive committee meeting prior to that? Okay, next up is the TAG, the Climate Action Advisory Group. Now, I wanted to mention, I probably should have mentioned this in the agenda meeting, but I didn't, but I always get confused about this committee. I believe this is not really actually a COG committee, and that this belongs in the other committees, because this is not, this is that technical advisory group.
Yep.
Okay, all right. And then Crescentia, you are, I think, then not the representative on this.
Usually
Okay.
Dave goes there.
Okay, so we may not be having that report tonight.
Can I use the time then for the facilities committee that it doesn't appear on here?
Oh, you certainly may.
All right, I will be brief. We met and basically they're still trying to establish baseline for COG facilities, and we discussed the pools. Not much has changed from what I told you last time. The motors, the spare parts for the motors and pumps at the pool is something that concerns them, because the company that makes these pumps and motors are only guaranteeing parts available for like the next 5 years until the next generation comes out, that sort of thing. So because the pools are about 10 years old, they are looking into maybe replacing some of that and using the current equipment as the spare parts that are needed, because we don't have any for that at the pools. Millbrook Marsh, let's see, the boardwalk part 2, the proposals came in at a very expensive. The money that's budgeted obviously isn't near what they were, and they were meeting with the land associates to go over that. Whitehall Road Regional Park, the second kickoff meeting was last week, but that was after the facilities meeting. COG building ownership continues the discussion, and we should expect more of a report on that in the July-August timeframe. General forum room use, we discussed that. Basically, everybody was sort of in favor of letting outside groups use the COG general forum room. I think that will come before the general forum. And let's see, the other thing was that there was a generous sort of planned gift that was given for Millbrook Marsh to Center Region Parks and Recreation, and they'll be working on the details of that very generous planned gift. And I think we've also voted to return to in-person meetings, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Patty. All right, and I've lost my place in the agenda. Let's see here. Okay, CCMPO Coordinating Committee.
This is a very brief report on this meeting. This was a special meeting for the coordinating committee to discuss comments for the MPO to send into PennDOT on their Pell study and proposed action plan regarding potential ways to increase revenue. So they, PennDOT did a study. They came up with a series of suggested steps for increasing revenue, and staff took committee comments, their own comments, combined them, and we met to discuss them. It was a really good meeting. Actually, we broke out into 2 different groups, so it was smaller groups to discuss everything, and they basically just wanted us to support all the comments that were in there. I'll just say the couple of things that were on there were bridge tolling for 8 or 9 bridges around the state. None of them are in Center County, and the funds would go back to those bridges. So that seemed to make sense to a lot of us. You know, I mean, there's definitely, you know, conflicting opinions about a lot of this. There's also some talk about managed lanes, but yeah, I can go into more detail if anybody wishes, but basically we supported all of the comments made by staff and the ideas proposed by PennDOT.
You, Lisa. All right, next up was the Human Resources Committee, and I attended that this month. We had two main topics of discussion, and one was about the in-person versus remote meetings. And I think there was a diversity of opinion on this particular committee about, you know, how to proceed with that. So I think that some folks really want, or at least one individual wanted to really maintain an all virtual environment. And then, you know, others just in person. So probably end up with multiple accommodations or ways to attend that meeting. The other topic was two administration position proposal for the COG. There was no ask for an endorsement per se, but just a discussion of why they were being requested. And, you know, you'll probably see them come through then at budget time. And it was the HR assistant and a finance assistant. And we had a good conversation about that. I think a fair amount of the conversation actually focused on the larger strategic planning of COG and not necessarily the positions themselves. I brought to the table again my glowing recommendation of Steve Baer's companion to his strategic planning of how he kind of maps out the next 5 years in terms of the capital improvements and then the staffing needs. And so it's kind of all there on one page. It's super helpful for elected officials. There was some conversation about, you know, kind of developing a model that would be uniform between the different agency departments within the agency that kind of would help. Anyway, so the conversation got a little bit bigger than those two positions, but it was a good conversation. And that was it. It was a good meeting. Any questions? Okay, next up is the joint PSE and TLU committee meeting.
So you can see in the agenda all the different things we went over, and I'll just point out a couple. So we did talk about going back to in-person meetings, and we too were split. We didn't really decide anything. I guess overall we said we'd prefer a hybrid so that people who didn't want to be in person could have that option. So two things that I do need a little feedback on, either today or you could let me know if they need to be put on the next meeting's agenda. So the first one is we had a presentation on utility scale solar, and the planning staff is putting together a study on this. There have been some companies that have come forward looking at ag areas to place these panels. And so it was kind of brought to staff's attention. And so they started looking into this. What they're doing now is trying to create a study on utility scale solar and a toolkit for municipalities to use. So in this study, one of the things they want to look at is how the comprehensive plan should deal with this. So does the comprehensive plan, which currently, you know, focuses a lot on preserving prime agricultural soils and our, you know, farming areas, those are the areas that these companies are looking for to put the panels. They're flat, they're large lots. So, you know, there's some obvious conflict there. So where do we want to go from here? What do we want to see in the comprehensive plan, and where we want to encourage this and disallow it. So, you know, it is regulated in several of the municipalities. In Ferguson, we allow it in AR and RA. So in the ag areas, it's a permitted use by right. So, and then in RR, it's a conditional use. So We discussed this, I know, when I was in the planning commission during the zoning rewrite as part of the big zoning rewrite. So it didn't get a lot of individualized attention on just this item. So I don't know if maybe this is something the board wants to look at. If you want to, you know, think about this, maybe I could just bring this up in the committee's report at our next meeting so that I can get some feedback from everyone. I don't know if it needs to be a standalone agenda item is what I'm saying. So, but I do need to get a little bit of feedback on your thoughts before staff completes that report. So that's my intention. If anybody has a different idea, that's fine, but I feel like this might be a good place for that. So
I have a quick question about that, Lisa, if you're ready for it. My question is, and I actually might have asked the county this, but now I can't remember the answer. Is this scale of solar allowed on preserved farms, or do they lose their designation?
Great question.
Thanks.
And one we discussed there. So the understanding is that it's not allowed.
That's
there is some, you know, some thoughts that you can grow some crops between the panels, that there is some kind of livestock that can live there, but it's really, from what staff was telling us, it seems really unlikely that farmers would do that because they'd have to revamp their whole model. And, you know, if they're interested in doing this, like leasing this land out to a company to do this, then you would expect they're not really interested in farming that area. So yes, that was the understanding of staff, is that it wouldn't be allowable in preserved areas, or there's another term I'm looking for, but yeah, in preserved.
Ag security areas.
Ag security, they thought it would be allowed.
I think probably it would be too.
Yeah. So preserved and, you know, just, I guess, like forested areas or something. That wasn't it, but I'll think
That's okay.
Preserved farms, yes, correct. It's not allowed.
Okay. Because that, you know, that's kind of one way to think about the approach for the comprehensive plan. I don't know, just an initial thought. Yeah. So, okay. Are you looking for any other feedback tonight, or?
The other item, and you'll see in the agenda, is on the committee itself. We're still working on this merger of PS&E and TLU. It hasn't been as smooth as, you know, we would have hoped. And one of the reasons is that when we combined these committees, there were a lot of other tasks added to the list of what we should manage. And a lot of them fell under infrastructure. So we have under there, for example, you know, electrical, gas, affordable housing. So there's a lot of different things that are falling under there. So Jim May tried to take it back a step and just look at existing tasks under TLU and PSE and put those together. I understand the need to address some of these other issues, but what I suggested, I was supportive of Jim doing that. What I thought we needed to do was to just really have a very basic summary of our tasks that only include those transportation, infrastructure, land use, very specific components that already existed in those committees. Then in a broader narrative, describe, yes, under land use would be availability and affordability of and use of land. Under transportation would be transit, would be multimodal. So we can get into that stuff there, but work on that as we move along, but just try to keep it very narrowly focused for the time being. So I guess, you know, I am looking at this point for this board to say, you know, do you want these two committees to be merged right now with that kind of focus? You know, there's some talk about waiting till the end of the year and having still both representatives come to the meetings. I thought we had agreed to not do that, but so, you know, I don't feel we need both, you know, all these members there. It's it seems pretty clear to me. So if you all are supportive of just doing that, combining them with those basic tasks, broadening the work items and action plans as we move down the road, I'll go back with that.
Thanks, Lisa. I think, whatever works for you guys,
Yeah, I am.
yeah. Yeah, Prasenjit, did you want to add
No,
anything else?
I'm
Okay,
supportive of what Lisa proposed.
sounds good. Yeah, it's a journey, not a destination or something. Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. It was complicated just by the other reworkings of the other committees at the same time. And so it's, but I think just simplifying it at this point and just getting it moving forward is what we need to do. So thank you.
Sounds good. Sure. Okay. Next up is Spring Creek Watershed Commission. Prasenjit, is there anything that you wanted to add to what we discussed earlier?
Yeah, no, during the meeting, we did not have the presentation because Lexi did not make it. We talked about the One Water report, a bunch of other small things. And I think there was one thing I wanted to say that we talked about invoicing the municipalities for memberships in 2022. And it depends upon the population of the municipalities. Now, we discussed whether we want to use the 2020 census, whose exact numbers are possibly not yet out, or we should use the older census numbers for one more year. And it was decided that we would hold on until July, August, and then use the old numbers and send the bills out to the municipalities if we don't have the new numbers by then. So that people have time to incorporate the numbers in their budgets. So that, I think, was the only thing that required discussion. Other than that, it was mainly small things as laid out in the agenda.
Thank you, Prasenjit.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to staff reports. We have no manager's report this week. And Centrise, did you want to add anything to the no report? Okay, all right.
Nope, you are correct.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. And we have the Public Works Director and Planning and Zoning Director's reports. If there's any questions or comments, I'm sure Centrise would be willing to pass them on. And we are going to meet that deadline. Did I speak too soon? All right, any communications to the board? I did have some communications about, once again, the use of the Houts lot. The laydown yard, is it not a laydown yard? There was some activity there. I think we're getting it worked out once again with Penn State, but if not, you'll hear next meeting about that. And any other communications to the board? Patty did acknowledge the communication earlier about the One Water plan. Okay. And then we have our calendar items. We've got all of our upcoming committee meetings. Is there anything anyone wanted to add? And it looks like we are going to get that double showing per day with CNET. So I'm ready to take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Night.